We will give you a sign, just a second. Gian Pietro, please.
So welcome everybody on the part of Sophia University to this seminar, which is part of one of our courses, but we have given the opportunity to be part of it to many friends, especially from the network of Economy of Communion. Thanks for accepting our invitation. Welcome to our students, and of course, to our speaker, Lawrence Chong from Singapore and from Consulus Consulting, who is here despite the time. It's 10 o'clock there. And thanks, Gian Pietro Parolin, our teacher of this course of strategic management or management strategy. I am always confused between these two. And so, Gian Pietro, please, it's up to you.
Okay, thank you, Benedetto. Just a few words. This course is held by me and Marco Furlotti. It's a strategic management, and we wanted to offer an opportunity to go in the real world, to have a grasp on how strategy works, on how we define strategies, how we implement strategy. That's why when we work on defining the course, Lawrence Chong, who is a very close friend, came in mind to me because of his experience. Consulus is an international consultancy, even though based in Asia. And I'm really very, very glad that he accepted to come and to stay with us. We have time, we have 2 hours, so we can really get the time to go in deep. So just a few words of presentation of Lawrence, who is the CEO and co-founder of Consulus. He has been working a lot of innovation in strategy, not only in consultancy, but also speaking in global events like World Brand Congress, Business of Design Week. He's a featured columnist. He intervened to radio and TV networks. Consulus has been working for global clients such as Sony and regional firms, but also in public institutions. It's very interesting that he's also a consultant to the interfaith dialogue at Holy See, and a member of the EOC International Commission. So he's got really many chances to see it, to operate on strategy from many perspectives. So I don't want to waste more time. So now I leave to Lawrence the first part of presentation. Then we have some questions from, we give priority to the students or strategic management. We are open to other questions from other people following this open lecture. Okay, so Lawrence, go on.
Okay. Buonasera, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm really very glad to be here with all of you. The last time I was in Sofia was 2017. It was a very memorable moment because It was just after meeting Pope Francis, where a number of us from the Economy of Communion, we were there in Rome, no? And then I made the trip to Sofia, whom I always consider is important, because so much of what Consulas has came from the intellectual capital, and its roots came from Chiara Lubich. So I always believe that Consulas and Sofia has a special relationship. And so Gian Pietro gave me a very big task. I will try to fulfill this assignment by the great professor. And I thought that this afternoon, in order to be useful for your development in strategy, to go and try to understand 3 questions that Consulas has been trying to understand on its own for 18 years. And the first question is, why is there a need for a consultancy for a united world? And the second is, what is the method of implementing change? And the third is how to scale change. And I really look forward to the dialogue that we will have, the conversations, and prompted by Gian Pietro, I will be very provocative. I'm supposed to share my failures, my views, my successes, and how we learn along the way. So I will try to give as many personal experiences as possible to make it useful. So first, why is there a need? We have to be very clear to say this for Consulas. Consulas would not have been born without the vision of Chiara Lubich. And I want to say this not from a religious point of view, but more from a strategic point of view. Because the people who are part of Consulas are not from the Focolare movement. Many of them are not Catholics. They themselves do not know Chiara Lubich. But when I explain in honesty my understanding of Chiara's vision and her view of the world, many people were very attracted to her vision. And it must be said that during COVID-19, Chiara's vision for a united world remained extremely relevant. And we can say it's relevant because we are not dealing with a very typical form of poverty in our world. We can say that Chiara was very prophetic in her view of the world. And in Consulas, we define the definition of poverty into 3 aspects, inspired by Chiara's vision. One is what we call the poverty of trust. And I think for those of you who are quite familiar with the founding of the Focolare movement by Chiara Lubich, it is clear to us that in the founding days of the Focolare movement, the first thing that came was the ability to build fraternity, then the culture of giving. It's not the other way around, right? It was this desire to build a relationship with another human being. So that overcame the poverty of trust. Then the second thing, it was clear to us as we reflected a lot over the years about Chiara's influence. Chiara was almost always going around talking about new politics, new media, a new vision for the church, everything new. If there's one nickname we can give to everything that Chiara Lubich was involved in, is she loved to give everyone a nickname. New, new, new. Right? So that newness is very important as an understanding of her intuition. And the third thing is, it was clear to us when we studied Chiara's life, Chiara Lubich was not a person of, okay, there's a problem, let's try to overcome the problem. But Chiara Lubich was one person who was very keen in finding out new ideas. The economy of communion is one example. We can almost say that many other aspects that Chiara Lubich was involved in or initiated, like for example, the project of Together for Europe, is another example of trying to find new solutions together, right? It's always new. Now, it is interesting that during COVID, the movies that were very popular on Netflix, Don't Look Up or Squid Game, reflected society's poverty of trust, poverty of institutions, poverty of solutions, which meant that Chiara's prophetic view that unless the world knows how to systemically design a process or a methodology towards a united world, we will constantly have problems related to climate change, poverty, inequality, so on and so forth. Then we looked around and we saw the power of management consultancies. The most powerful management consultancy in the world is McKinsey. But McKinsey has been associated with deep human rights concerns, like shaping Europe's response to the refugee crisis, ignoring human rights. McKinsey has also been linked to issues with China. And then during the Donald Trump administration, McKinsey was also associated with the issues of immigration in the south of the US, separation between kids and parents. And these are all publicly mentioned by global media, such as the New York Times, the Washington Post. So we thought to ourselves, can we trust the current global management consultancy firms which help to influence global policy, economic plans? Can we trust them to shape a united world? Our opinion is no. In the South African debacle a number of years ago, it was clear that companies such as McKinsey and KPMG were helping certain elite in South Africa to rob the wealth of South Africans for the interest of a few. And then again, when we studied Chiara's view for a united world, we understood deeply that her view was rather comprehensive and systemic. That means from a non-religious point of view, because as I explained, many people who are with consulars, they are not joining consulars for a religious purpose. They want to change the world. If we looked at Chiara Lubig's contribution to the vision of a united world, it was quite interesting from the aspect of the economy to social to interreligious dialogue. It was not just a simplistic vision, it was coherent and it was holistic. And Pope Francis himself, whom I consider as someone who is very aware of the vision of Chiara, actually said this, and this was his speech to all of us who gathered in Rome in 2017. And those of you who are there, you'll be very familiar. He said that the economy of communion, if he wants to be faithful to his charism, must not only care for the victims, but must build a system where there are ever fewer victims, where possibly there may no longer be any. As long as the economy still produces one victim and there is a single discarded person, communion has not been realized. Celebration of universal fraternity is not full. Therefore, we must work towards changing the rules of the game of the social economic system. Imitating the Good Samaritan of the gospel is not enough. End quote. This is quite significant because before launching the economy of communion, it is clear that the culture of giving, or the aspect of being the first to reach out to the other, to build a society of fraternity, was already present in the vision of Chiara Lubig. The reason why Chiara had to launch the economy of communion, in my view, was to go beyond generosity, but to go towards being an advocate to change the global economic system and to use entrepreneurs in a new way to demonstrate that it is possible to give preference for the poor. So, in Consular's worldview, this is how we see the difference between social enterprise, sharing economy, and the economy of communion. Some people in Asia confuse the economy of communion as social enterprise. So we had to put out this table to explain to them. Social enterprise is about achieving social aims through business. Social enterprise serves the underserved for equality. In social enterprise, there is a participant, there are businesses for these participants. The relationship is the one who starts the social enterprise, they are known as a developer, And then the participants are beneficiaries, people with special needs, maybe. And the economic dimension is participating enterprises and recipients. It's very trendy. Many countries are promoting social enterprises, and that is a wonderful category. Then you have the sharing economy, like Airbnb, Uber. From our view, that is a sharing of resources. Good idea. Maximize use of resources or efficiency. How do you participate? People with means, businesses. What is the relationship? You will have a company that coordinate and then participants. And what is the economic dimension here? Resources. And what is the cultural and spiritual dimension? Technology. Well, in our assessment, the economy of convenience main aim is to bring about fraternity in order to end poverty. That means if we end poverty without fraternity, it's not the economy of convenience. And the consequence of an economy of convenience is we should be able to bring about the united world. How? Not one government, but governments who will work with one another. Not like now, where governments are hoarding vaccines, denying third world countries of vaccines. And the economy of convenience means participation for all. It's not communism. It's everyone having increasingly equal opportunities to participate, not just for the few, like the capital markets. Like cryptocurrency, we can say, it's a very good idea, but increasingly, the 1% is able to game the system so that they maximize the profits from crypto. Again, cryptocurrency, a very good idea, but it's being abused by the 1%, right? So what is the relationship we should bring about, which is a big challenge? How do we make it equal and reciprocal wherever this system happens? But to do that, it is not enough to have entrepreneurs. We need policymakers, we need a new education system, we need the actions of individuals, which is why what Sophia is doing to generate a new generation of professionals, professors, entrepreneurs is extremely important, because the economy of convenience is about the whole economic system. And what is the cultural and spiritual dimension? The economy of convenience is one system that is not shy to talk about the role of God, whether is it in Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, Hinduism. Again, that interfaith characteristic is something that Kara Lubick brings to the table with her set of ideas, something that we have not fully discovered until recently. So we say in Consulars that we are inspired by the principles of the economy of convenience, but our specific focus is to foster the building of a more united world by proposing ideas to redesign economic relationships and systems. Our response then is, since global management consultancies are so powerful, we would like to present an alternative. And this is where the challenge is. It's extremely difficult to build a global consultancy, because that system is a old boys club. It's all men, right? Very few women. In fact, all the major partners of the big consulting firms are all men, right? So that's another issue. So if we want to get into that system to disrupt it, this is our biggest challenge, and we are still working at it. So then comes to how do we do it? And we have codified, in a sense, what Chiara said before the founding of the economy of convenience. In fact, we found this speech in 1987, which was quite fascinating for us. And she said this: every person in the world, from the owner to the administrator, from the director to the technicians, from office workers to laborers, in order to build solidarity with others, must love everyone in such a way that he or she becomes one with the others. In this spirituality, mutual love leads to reciprocal understanding, to sharing the fatigue of the others, to making our own the problems of the others, and to seeking solutions together. It leads us to find common agreements for new forms of organizations in the working world. All come to share and participate together in the means of production and in the fruits of profits. Now, this speech from Chiara is very important to Consulus. We have almost used this speech to design our business model and our methodologies to enable this, to test this concept. And strangely enough, in the last 20 years, many new management theory are almost talking about this. They talk about safe space. Google has done a very massive study on what makes the best teams. Microsoft, even Apple, there's a lot of this mutual carrying of burden. So there are a lot of algorithms, a lot of data set that's affirming sort of the prophecy of Chiara. Of course, they don't know Chiara Lubick, but just to say that it's fascinating for us to discover this. Because I didn't want to speak all the time, I want to play you videos once in a while. And this is just a glimpse of Consulus' work. But this was done a number of years ago before COVID. All right, yeah. So just a glimpse.
Consulus is a purpose-driven consultancy that helps other organizations find their purpose. We are a united group of consultants that work with the client to achieve unity so that they can be successful and purposeful. Because in Industry 4.0, it cannot be just about numbers. Profit without purpose results in people being lost. Innovation must be about people, not just about technology and machine.
So, I must say that when I started the business, the partners, again, they are not from the Focolare movement. They have no idea about this whole history and this whole ideals. It took a while for me to explain slowly, one by one, my story, because I had to explain I'm not a genius. I didn't come up with this overnight myself. And I have to be very transparent to my partners. Where did this come from? And because my partners were from different religious background, I was explaining to them that this is not religious. Fortunately, the Focolare movement has many participation from people of other religion. So over time, the partners understood, and they adopted the principles of the economy of convenience. And this statement that you are seeing here was voted by the partners, because in our company, you cannot just write a statement, you have to vote whether you agree, right? So it was a unanimous vote by the partners, and it's about shaping a better and inclusive economic system, helping leaders, companies, and cities discover their better self by enabling them to become the difference they are meant to be from the inside out. Now, in Asia, you must understand that it's a very commercial environment. You cannot talk philosophy with Asians. They don't have patience. And so for us, when we began this process many years ago, it was crazy. And strangely enough, because we dared to be crazy, people liked us and gave us business. So it's not a bad thing to be crazy. Yeah, but just to say that it's a very commercial reality. It's all about making money and money and money, and then you tell them what? Better and inclusive economic system. I don't know what you're saying, but eventually, because people couldn't put us, they liked us, right? Then of course we have to define very clearly what is it that we do. In those days, in 2004, it is unthinkable to put business together with design. Why? Because in Asia, in those days, designers are not valued. Designers are seen as contractors, as people without any brains. It's not like in Europe, where designers are respected. It's a serious profession, but not in Asia. So when we try to put business and design together, and we want to bring about purpose and unity, it's 4 difficult things that we are trying to put together. It's like putting business and design is like putting oil and water, right? So what we decided to do was to find a way to make it almost like olive oil and vinegar, so that it mixes well, right? So that is the other thing that we managed to have a breakthrough in those days. And I must say this, that when I was young and I was and I'm active in the folklore movement, right? And in those days when Kara explained to us the concept of the Abba school, and she mentioned that every discipline is equal, to try to understand the plan of God, that helped me a lot to say that, because in the consulting world, it's an unfair industry. If you're in finance, you are the boss. If you're in creative, you are the bottom, So if we wanted to have a united world, even in consulting, we have to level it. Everyone, like what Kiara would say to us, the young people, you are from mathematics, you are from theology, but you are equal, right? In order to try to understand. So that's what we try to do, to follow that model. Our theory of change happens in 3 ways. Well, very much like what Kiara said about new. In order to have a new system, Kiara Lubick said we have to have a new people. We do the same. We realize that many consultants are trained based on the basis of efficiency and effectiveness. They are not trained on the basis of understanding purpose, and they don't have the sensitivity to unity. So that's the first pillar we went after, in order to train the consultants to have that sensitivity. The second problem, as a consultancy become larger and larger, the fees will be more and more expensive. If our fees get more and more expensive, we cannot live the principle of the economy of convenience, but we cannot be small. If we are small, we cannot compete with McKinsey, right? So so we have always been trying to find a way of subsidizing. That means we do the big project so that we can pay a discount, a heavy discount, or I would say a ridiculous discount for the smallest companies, because the smaller companies require our help. But in order to best help them, we cannot put the less people. We must put the best people to help them. So it's a kind of a subsidizing approach. Then of course we need to influence leaders. We cannot just say, oh, the economy of convenience is great, and please listen to us. But we have to be there in the room. So we decided to focus on 3 areas: leaders who seek purpose and seek to build a better world; organizations, they can be companies, they can be non-profit entities, but they want to be relevant to seek a better world; or even cities. We realize that our work for cities have a very interesting opportunity for us to shape the economy of convenience at the micro level, right? So that's an area that we continue to do a lot more. So one example is we just finished the Holistic Leadership Program with Indiana University in the United States. It's a multi-year program where we influence leaders to think holistically from the elements of purpose, relationship, and how through purpose and unity, they can shape better workplaces. So this is a program that we are very invested to try to spread and shape more leaders in this way. Then in Taiwan, with the University of Wenzhou, we developed this program to help youth find their own purpose, so that they can be more sensitive to make a bigger contribution to the society in Taiwan. So we do a lot of this kind of what we call custom design methodologies, in order to help leaders arrive at the impactful understanding that purpose and unity is very useful to shape better economy and also help themselves, right, progress accordingly. And this is one example of where we give a heavy discount to help this social enterprise. 90% of this workforce, they were ex-offenders, they were imprisoned, and they left the prison in order to find a second life, and we could work with them. But more importantly, we respected them by helping to transform the entire business model and business experience. This is one example of how we try to shape and influence business leaders, politicians. We call it Shape the World. And it's an event that we do annually where we talk about how the united world is necessary, whether it's in shaping the elderly, care for the elderly, or whether the united world is important in order to shape better participation for people. And this is something that we are always very keen to promote. So just to talk more about the methodology, since this is a strategy class, and to answer the professor's requirement in this lecture. So let me explain that for us, purpose and unity they are not slogans. We measure them using data, and we do this through quantitative and qualitative, and we have been doing this for 18 years. And it's quite incredible what we managed to discover. And from these two aspects, we have been able to develop a series of methodology, which I just want to briefly run through so that we have time for dialogue. And just to say that even for us, we were often tested on how faithful we will be to our purpose. In the early days, especially when we started out, I still remember when I was telling someone from a big firm, a consultancy firm, that I would like to build a consultancy that changed the world. And this person from a very big consulting firm said, Lawrence, the word consultants are almost like con men. We are not supposed to be priests. What you are trying to do is you are trying to be a priest, right? So we are not saints, all right? So I said that sorry, can you hear me? Yeah. So we said that if I cannot make it by trying to live for a different ideal, I'm happy if the company dies, right? So there was one, so in this part of the world, it's quite common in order to secure projects, consultants actually, unfortunately, have to resort to some level of, whether you call it bribery or being very, good at gaming the system. So in the early days of Consulars, we were offered to do a contract. It's quite a big amount in those early days for us. And we were very excited to begin the contract. And just as we were about to sign the contract, the client said to us that, look, Lawrence, I know the government very well. And I said to him, good for you. And he said, if you want my contract, I would need you to double the fee of the contract. I said, wow, that's fantastic, because then our fee doubles, right? No, you don't understand what I mean. I need you to double the fee so that when we go to the government to get the grant, you will return me 50%, right? That means he wanted not to pay anything by inflating the project amount. Now, in those days, we didn't have money. So that was a question of purpose. Why did we found Consulars? To change the world, right? So I was torn. And of course, I cannot do this because it's not in line with our purpose. I went back to my business partners. I explained to them the situation. Fortunately, they agreed. Yes, we cannot do this. This is not our purpose. I was really very blessed. We said no, but after that, I didn't sleep because we don't have the sales, right? And 2 days later, we received a call. And the call was from another business association. They said, okay, Lawrence, how are you? Yes, very good. We have a business for you. Oh, fantastic. What is it? There is this project and we need you to work on it, but we need you to agree to this quickly, like this week. Oh, we don't have a problem. I mean, we are very happy to do this, right? Since you asked us to. And I asked him, how much is the project value?
100,000 US dollars. And we just lost 100,000 US dollars. And this was the project, right? So there were many moments to test the purpose that we set out to do, right? The consultancy to shape a united world. So I would say many moments we were struggling, you know, about how can we actually practice this. But many a times when we come through, there was always providence, and providence has become a very important indicator on whether we should go into a market, whether we should go into a partnership. And I would say that providence is also a very useful indicator that a lot of businesses in management thinking do not account for. And I've often spoken about this element of using providence as a guiding strategy, right? So
excuse me, always. Just a question. So,
yeah,
is in this case providence a sign of alignment between the market needs that you have and your strategy?
yes,
It's a sort of alignment, no?
it is. I mean,
So,
I have seen it literally more than 100 times. That and we actually have a business development formula in the company. We call it the 3 Ps, right? So first is person. Do the right person come along, right? Second, does the right project comes along? Third, does providence happen? That means through no ability, somehow something happens. An extraordinary moment, right? But it's real. It's a project. It's a connection that you know we can only dream of, and it happens. So that's a confirmation. Yes, let's start.
is trying to what I'm trying is to translate this spiritual concept in a very operational one, no? Because everyone could understand that when we are matching our company purpose, values, and whatever, and the market needs, we are getting into a certain specific path,
I mean,
no?
correct. I mean, my friends would call it luck.
Okay.
Right? I said, in my case, it's not luck, it's providence.
Yeah.
Right. So they do believe in luck, right? So it's not something that is out of this world for my friends in business, right? So I would say in a nutshell, for our methodologies, there are 3 parts, right? Because first, because of purpose and unity, we always have to impact the business model, how purpose and unity drives it. And then second is the organization model, how purpose and unity shapes the culture. Then thirdly, for the branding and the marketing, how purpose and unity is presented and manifested, right? So across whatever things that we do, that is almost the unifying feature, purpose and unity. So when we execute a transformation project, whether it's for a company, a city, leadership, digital transformation, product experience, or impact, purpose and unity underpins all these 6 solutions of Consulus. And even in the design, we never design anything unless the design reflects the purpose of the business and brings people together. Whether is it a township or even a bank, like the top left, the Islamic bank that we did for Brunei, the effects of that transformation in the design experience was unity, because in the past, that bank felt more like a government department for immigration, very serious, you know, people were not smiling. But after we transform it in the experience and the design, families are happy to come in, the kids were happy to run around the branch, right? So it is always a very important indicator for us whether we have lived up to purpose and unity. So in order to test Carol Lubick's vision, we push ourselves to do a wide variety of industries and size of companies. That means we have applied this thinking in multinationals like Sony, Tottenham Group, one of the largest engine makers in Europe, banks, heavy industries, consumers, social enterprise, foundations. And this is important because if we are not able to replicate a similar impact on these diversity of situations or industries, that means our methodology doesn't work. So we made a lot of effort to try to find different type of projects to test this out. And because of the diversity of industry, we are very confident to say that Kara Lubig's intuition that we can say that companies need to run on purpose and unity before they can have sustainable profits. That is something we can say for sure. They may not say the same words, but everyone is looking for a way to define their strategic purpose, and everyone is finding new ways of struggling to unite people in innovative ways. That is the #1 problem of organizations worldwide. So for project processes, just to say that during COVID-19, because we were very used to executing projects across the world, very quickly when COVID-19 struck, we created a free business clinic. That means we review the companies, their finances and their situation very, very briefly. They don't have to send us any spreadsheets, but we just want to know their situation. And then we give them a 1 hour or sometimes 2 hour advisory in order to help them. And this can only come about because we have been so used to executing projects across the world for different industries. If we didn't have that experience of serving in different markets, we won't be able to do this very quickly. And this methodology that we quickly put together for COVID-19 is the result of the diversity of projects and type of services that counselors already have had to provide for over 18 years, right? So whether it's sales, suppliers, how they create new products, how they pivot their business models was something that we are extremely familiar with. And for sure, it is clear that many companies were affected by cash flows, manpower, but we also discovered that if companies were more focused or realize their purpose, and they were able to be resilient in their culture, as in they had better, stronger unity, they survived better from COVID-19 issues. So it's quite telling that even in crisis, you can say that purpose and unity are your very important capital base in order to help companies pivot, in order to meet the disruptive challenges of today. So just to explain that, we regularly do programs to promote the understanding of purpose, because most of the time when people talk about purpose, they use a facilitator approach. We don't go around the room asking, what do you think is your purpose? Our methodology requires us to use data, right? So we actually study what matters to them strategically, and we study their competitive space, and then we propose to them a strategic focus for them to consider. So we evaluate a possible purpose by looking at their ability, their influence, which is their belief system, and their differentiation, so that the purpose is not something that, again, is a slogan, but it is useful enough to guide future growth. And we do this by looking at the company in the middle, their relationships with one another, and how that relationship with one another affects their ability to function, which is what we call the corporate dimension. Then we zoom out and take an operative view of how they exist and thrive in the new world. So these are very quick samples that when we find out about their purpose and we help them to define, and when the board agrees to it, then we can start mapping out services, solutions, issues. We are also best able to help them understand their vulnerabilities in terms of their finances, their challenges in terms of which business model do they need to evolve into in order to be more resilient. And in the aspect of culture, in recent times we are doing a lot of study on trust in organizations, and our next education series is actually on institutions, trust in institutions. And part of that is, as I mentioned earlier, is this belief that we need a new generation of leaders in order to shape better institutions. Because again, in the vision of Chiara Lubbock, it is very critical to have new people. So when we look at new leaders, we are looking at the heart and spirit, how well they do embracive thinking, that means openness to the different discipline and to others, how well they connect with another person, with another colleague, and how well they combine purpose and unity in executing operations. So I would say, I would describe that we couldn't, in the very early beginning, we couldn't really put our methodology, because we have quite a few, in one category, but now we are very comfortable to put them in the space of design thinking. The only difference I would say is we don't do facilitated design thinking. Our design thinking methodologies requires data. Other than that, the element of dialogue, having these conversations and working with one another to understand solutions, creating new solutions is very much part of the components of the counselor's suite of solutions in strategic thinking. So it also shapes the way we understand the economy. It also shapes the way we present data and information in order to influence stakeholders, like the Inclusive Economy report that we are still working on these days. Now, I want to talk specifically about our work with social enterprise, because this is a very good demonstration of how we work with what we call vulnerable enterprises. That means enterprises who start out with a very good heart to help people, but their business models are not effective or efficient. And because we come from the economy of communion, we understand why the purpose of a business is there to serve the greater good. We could connect with them. And so we developed this entire system with a social enterprise association in Singapore. And now this has already been implemented in 18 over enterprises in Singapore. And some of them are actually operating in the Southeast Asia region. And when we work with them, again, it's a very holistic view. So it's something that they understand, they can relate, and they can immediately realize in terms of their impact, their effectiveness. But more importantly, during the process, what they found very useful was they themselves thought that they will be able to they are already making impact. But when we work with them, we help them realize that the impact that they are doing is not that comprehensive, and they can do better. And I think that was one of the joys in working on this kind of projects, to help them see, realize, and grow their impact. So in this space, actually, we are doing a lot for the social enterprises in the region here. And one of the things that we try to do a lot increasingly in order to influence change is this thing called the Change Makers Program, where we try to bring many other people who are not our clients, but they believe in the vision of Chiara Lubbock, and they also believe in the united world, to come and have a dialogue with us and ask them to share their experiences of how they are impacting a united world wherever they are. So you have politicians, you have people in government, you have entrepreneurs, you have people in academia who join us for these sessions. The last part of this is that a lot of our recent work in the last 5 years has been to create what we call theory of change. That means looking at different companies or social enterprises or non-profit, how do we help them better define matrices in order to increase their impact to shape a better world? And this is something that we are very excited about, working on very precise matrix and customized to their situations. So whether they are helping our beneficiaries through technology, or whether they are trying to shape impact through their own personal influence, those are the kind of things that we are doing more and more with data and matrices. So the digital transformation became a natural segue for consulars to enter into this field. When we were in Rome, inspired by Pope Francis, we realized that this was an area we didn't have. So after 2017, listening to Pope Francis, we started to go into digital transformation because this area is going to divide and create a bigger chasm between the have and have-nots because of digital literacy. And we felt that we can make a contribution in our consulting methodologies. So we do skills transformation, develop digital roadmaps so that companies or companies who wants to do good, they can better prepare themselves to be more resilient. So these are just some of the examples of the methodologies and the digital transformation roadmap that we have already executed for a number of companies. Well, just one note on design. We still do a lot of design work. Why? Because it's very interesting that in Kara Lubig's vision for a united world, she often describe a vision for the arts, a vision for beauty, right? And we realize that if we want to really transform companies in terms of purpose and unity, we need to find a way to help them show it. So even in very rough industries that they are in manufacturing and trading, we realize that when we talk about purpose and unity, and we help them rebrand to reflect purpose and unity, their minds change when they see that new logo that expresses purpose and unity. I remember one CEO said to me, I've never felt so clear about my path, you know, and because of the logo that you did for us. And another one of the staff, one day they won a business award and I was invited to the dinner. He came and gave me a hug. I said, what happened? Well, Lawrence, remember you preached about unity. Now with your logo, every time we look at the logo, we remember we have to be united, you know. So there are very, very amazing ways, you know, once you talk about purpose and unity and you put that into design as well, in how you galvanize people towards unity. So the last part, before we open for discussion, I think the biggest challenge for any enterprise inspired by Kara Lubig is how do you scale? And this is a problem I have been trying to learn from the economy of communion. And the challenge is, speaking to a number of EOC companies, many EOC companies are very concerned. If they become very big, they will lose unity or they will lose purpose. Our problem is when we started out to be a consultancy and if we want to be taken seriously, we cannot avoid being a global firm. Because if we are not a global firm, we cannot influence, we cannot be an alternative to McKinsey. So this is actually our number one challenge, still is our number one challenge, right? So we do a lot of moments together to try to focus on purpose and unity. For example, our annual school, which is where we come together for formation and understanding of purpose, is 5 days, right? And in 5 days, not doing business is a lot of time invested in understanding purpose and unity. And we also spend a lot of time defining who we are. Like, for example, inculcating culture of purpose and unity is essential. And we do this through deep sharing about how to build this together and how to understand. And we also explain how the methodologies have to be connected to a culture of unity. That means the consular's methodology cannot be used in any situation without a culture of purpose and unity, right? And that's hard because most of the time consultancies are like product shops. You have to sell products, you have to sell aggressively in order to get sales, right? But we spend a lot more time on the culture. And the other thing was, I started the company, as I mentioned earlier, with a group of friends who are not from the Focolare movement, who are not Catholics. So I cannot just say whatever I want. I have to put it in a framework. I have to put it in a process. So 2009, 2010, we started this process of codification and governance to write down what does it mean to be consulars? What is the principles behind consulars? Why? So that we can prove it can work, prove that Kara's ideas can work as well. And we want it to be sustainable. And lastly, we want it to be scalable. But we needed to find examples, right? So we couldn't find any other EOC example except the Focolare movement. Because the Focolare movement was evaluated by the church, it was questioned about its charism, and it had to maintain its communion. So we looked at the statutes of the Focolare movement. And because the statutes were very interesting, they were a reflection of the Catholic Church methodical way of governance. That means you cannot just say whatever you want. You have to submit yourself to, for those of us who are familiar with canon law, with the understanding of the precepts. So we looked into that and we found that fascinating. And of course, the other advantage is the Focolare movement is global. It had different cultures, it had different situations. So that became our reference point. So in the movement, in the statutes of the movements is very interesting. It is clear that the key aspect is mutual love, right? And we understood that even for us, the two principles is still purpose and unity, which is rather similar to the founding principles of the movement. In Kiara's case, she was clear about the will of God and mutual love. In our case, it's purpose and unity. And we practice this as in everyone who wants to join Consulars, they have to write a personal letter. Why they want to join, what is their story. This is one of our best story by our colleague. In order to join Consulars, he wrote his story in a comic book. So he explained to us how he was looking for purpose and he thought that purpose cannot be lived. And the comic book was explaining how he would like to join Consulars to live out his purpose. So just to say, but he's rare. You do not need to draw like him to join Consulars, yeah? Then we define in the movement, the statutes of the movement, the movement is very clear that certain instruments are necessary and important. Likewise, for us, we define the practices as in every Friday, we have a sharing circle. We have something like a moment of truth called the bonsai. We have the annual school, and we define these are important and mandatory in the life of what we call a consulite, who is a member of Consulars. And we also define the different levels of being part of Consulars. Those who can join the leadership, they need to be involved in the life of communion. If they are not in the life of communion, they cannot lead Consulars, because for us, the life is extremely important to preserve the values and the beliefs system. Then we also define the leadership is always collegial, college, always seeing things together in unity is called the leadership circle. And of course, how do we plan the succession of the future leaders, by what term, and how do we do it? Now, over the last 18 years, initially we were in phase 1, whereby it's just an inspiration. There is no governance. Now we are in phase 2, where everything is starting to go by voting. We have to ask consultation. We cannot just change it. But eventually, phase 3, we would like to move the whole of Consulars towards what we call collective ownership. So we have also been looking at other examples. We found this company, Arup, is very interesting. They are not economy of communion, but they have very similar concept and precepts of the economy of communion. And they are a global firm, right? Where all the employees own the organization and they operate around the world. So this is one example. So just to give a brief glance of our own constitution. So this is the latest one, which everyone in Consulars voted on, the constitution. So you can see the quote of Kiara Lubick at the preamble. And then we define, our purpose is what do we mean? What is the outcome we hope to achieve? How are we organized? What defines a vote? Who is an individual or a company that can be part of Consulars? What is the relationship with the World Center, with the others? Who are the associates? And then we also define what happens if the person is, working on something illegal. What happens to them? How do we respond? And then we talk about our values, which is unity, humility, leadership, professionalism. And we define our purpose. We define our way of life. How do we practice? How do we live? And then we also explain in detail each of these aspects, methodologies. So the methodologies of Consulars, the business methodologies, are part and parcel of the software of Consulars itself. That means from the values to they are the same, they are integrated, right? So very much in line with Kiara Lubick's vision that the life and the practice is the same. It cannot be separated, right? The instruments are integral to the Focolare movement. Then of course, we talk about the revenue, the one-third rule, and then we define how the 1/3 is going to be given, when is to be, how is it going to be managed, you know, and also the leadership, you know, there must always try to be 2-person to see together. Unlike the Focolare movement, we couldn't manage to find 1 man, 1 woman for every task. We are still trying to do. So we try to make it more equal. You know, a number of the positions are held by our ladies. So maybe one day we'll arrive at that vision. Yeah. And all this. Okay, so it even covers business model, equal opportunity. And we define as our last chapter, the act of providence. And just to say, because providence has helped us so much, you know, in understanding what we need to do, how we should do, that became integral to the constitution of councillors. Yeah, so it's signed by the chairman. Last year, Stanislav Lenz was elected the chairman. We rotate the chairman every year by election. So previous year was Jim Fang, he was elected. So again, when Stanislav Lenz, when he ends the term this year, we will call another election again. And so lastly, I just want to say that, you know, we are very fortunate that we managed to have a big family from different parts of the world and different cultures, different languages. And now I would say that the thing that we are very focused on is how can councillors contribute to shaping the future economy. And I'll just play this last video and I look forward to the conversation. Okay, so hope this has been useful.
So
And looking
Lawrence,
forward now.
thank you very much really for this very rich and passionate presentation. And before we leave space to the students, I want to make you a very short question.
Yeah.
The big failure in your professional life and what you learned from that failure.
Yeah, yes, good question. I think the big failure is assuming how to explain that, you know, sometimes because we come from a very idealistic view and we have certain frameworks in our mind about how to change a situation, and when that idealistic view overtake our ability to sense maybe this is a situation that we do not need to always bring about change, right? We need to give it time, right? So I guess whenever those moments come, and of course over time with more experience, we learn how to let go, right? But I would say that the biggest challenge is always how do you detect and how do you sense what you call when you should actually intervene or when you should just be patient, right? So I think the patience part is the hardest. Yeah.
Good. So please, Joseph, Fernandel, first of all, the students of the class, please, you have the priority. Great.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lawrence. And
Yes.
your consultancy is a very good consultancy because you try to speak about the realities of unity also. But I would want to ask a question where, have you ever met a company that are producing weapons? Understand, no weapons like guns, all these things. And then you try to advise them, try to explain the purpose and unity. Because since Kiara was Kiara, according to the Focolare movement, they try to live the unity so that all may be one, no? And then being in a consultancy company or consultant, no? How did you, or if yes, if you have met people, a company like this, how did you manage to explain the purpose of unity to this kind of company in the world?
Yeah, very, very good question. So far, we did not want to do any projects for companies that produce weapons. In fact, some of the earliest projects that we rejected, they were companies who manufacture weapons. We don't have an answer. I don't have an answer for you. So we still do not know whether we want to go into that market. So there are some markets that we don't go into, but I can tell you that we do help. Another example, like those companies in oil and gas, fossil fuels, we are working with them to transform the business towards renewable energy. We are working, we already shared with them about purpose and unity, and they agree. And so we are actually beginning work on some of those companies. That means they are in industries, or maybe another company in Southeast Asia, they were involved in some what you call production that were not so much for renewable energy. Same, we have moved that money, and we have worked out a financing model so that they can make profits from other sectors. Then third example is a company that again in Asia that usually have to pay money for corruption because you don't get a job. We work with them to create another business model so that they don't always have to pay. They reduce their payments to bribe the officials, but they can only minimize. They cannot fully overcome because it's a very difficult situation in many countries. So just to say that our advantage is that when people have this kind of moral issues, we know how to work out the financial model to help them transit into other sectors. Yeah, but for weapons, I don't have an answer for you because we have rejected 3 projects already, right? And one of them is the largest, So I still do not know how to handle that situation. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you very much. The last one
Yeah.
from my side, and economy of communion also try to look about the environment, no? And since we are talking about sustainability, we are dealing with the sustainable development goals, where the environment is the key. And companies dealing with gas and all these things, how do you manage to explain to them the purpose of living on Earth, like taking care of the earth, taking care of the environment where we are living, because we are trying, like consultants, we are trying now for future generation, not only for us, but also for the future. The last question.
Yeah, I think you will find that many companies, they already want to move their companies to do good. They don't need us to preach to them, but they need a solution. their question most of the time is, okay, I agree with you. How do you do it? How do you convert without the loss of jobs? Because in many situations, in many economies, and I don't know about your situation, if you close down entire oil and gas industries, you are talking about the loss of millions of jobs. And you have to ask yourself, is it responsible for the government or for anybody to force the closure of these companies? Because these workers, they do not have new industries, to join, right? So our role is to do what we call economic transition. So we do in 3 phases, right? So usually for economic transition, it takes about 10 years. You can't do shorter than that. Phase by phase, make sure the new business models can generate income, make sure the staff can be upskilled, reskilled in order to do these jobs, and so that they can handle the economic disruption. Because it's a very hard question. It's an easy statement to make. Let's save the planet. But it's not an easy answer to give by telling everyone you are retrenched and God bless you. I'll pray for you. Right? So there are no easy solutions. So I think what we have learned over the years is that there's no such thing as an easy solution. Every solution requires, like what Chiara would say, love, and also to be smart about it, right? To really think very carefully about what would it take to transit any business towards renewable sustainability and inclusion. Yeah. But I want to say that in recent years, I don't have a problem. You talk to any CEO, they agree with SDG. In fact, they're asking us to do more. They are asking more difficult questions. How do you actually do it? And you cannot just go to a room and say, please be more inclusive. They will challenge you. They will say, how do you do it? Right. So I don't think we have a problem on that front on convincing. We have a problem with solutioning. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Welcome, sir.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lawrence, for the presentation.
Yes.
I wish to know, because from the onset you said you were emphasizing on the fact that when coming up with your with your idea, the majority of those with whom you are working are not from the economy of communion family. So how will you describe your management styles? How did you try to handle this aspect, since many of them had a different vision, many of them had different ideas that were not the same like that of Chiara, but you still continue working hand in hand with them so as to achieve your goals?
Yeah, very good question. I was fortunate because my partners, they were religious, they were spiritual, and they were religious. So is a devout Muslim, another one is a Christian, and another one is a Buddhist. When I explain my values, I explained about Chiara, and I also showed pictures about Chiara with the Buddhist, Chiara with the Muslim, Chiara with the Jews, and said, oh, this idea is relevant to us too, right? I didn't come across as a Catholic trying to baptize them and said, you either convert to be a Christian or I cannot do business with you. But I presented a vision of Chiara Lubick for a United World, and they love it actually. In fact, my Muslim partner said, this is very much in line with Muslim values about fraternity, about care for the community. So I think the advantage I had was Chiara always had this legacy for interreligious dialogue. And so it was easier for me to present Chiara Lubick with interreligious dialogue and then the economy of communion. So then it became easy after that. They were open-minded. I could present the ways, we can do this to build unity in the office. For example, one of the things we started was to spend every Friday sharing experiences. Now in Asia, you don't do that. Nobody wants to share experience because it's a very private thing. You go to the temple and you pray quietly on your own. You don't share experiences. It's very unnatural, right? So we took a while to start, but after that, once the culture took root, you can say the culture of unity took root, it's easier to explain the economy of communion. So this is what I mean. When Chiara started the movement, she didn't talk about, okay, I want to change the world. I want to have the economy of communion. She didn't. She started with building trust. She started with an act of love, and then the giving started. right? So I think following that formula was very good for me. Yes.
And with this formula, what are some of the methods that you use to assess your operational effectiveness?
Well, first of all, in Asia, people usually do not share their emotions. They are very guarded. You know, if you ask an Asian, "Are you well?" "Yes." "How's your day?" "Great." "How are you?" "Fantastic." They don't go into this
Details.
the details. So when we started the culture of unity is very important before the economy of communion can happen, right? So when we started, everyone felt comfortable, felt happy, they could bear each other's burden. That's why I said Kiara's speech in 1987 is really a Magna Carta. It's a very useful step to start with that, to share each other's burdens, to listen to each other. Then finally, then you talk about production. But you cannot talk about, okay, let's do an economy of communion. We have this, you'll be shot dead, quartered and alive in Asia, right? So because I started with the relationship, to listen, my efficiency improved. Because why? I do not have to guess what my colleagues are doing. In meetings, my colleagues will say, "This week I made a mistake. I did this." It's a public confession. And so you know how to react. You know, okay, someone is really down. You know, something has happened in the family. That's why this thing. I do not have to play politics in consulates because I know the feeling. I know what is going on. But in most companies in Asia, politics is very common. And talking bad about your boss is very common. They do not need to talk bad about me because they can say it to me. "Lawrence, this, like when we do bonsai, is our moment of truth, right? I get feedback in the face, right? "Lawrence, maybe this year, you know, you're too busy, you didn't have time, you didn't explain yourself carefully." Okay, sorry. But effectiveness and efficiency is fantastic. During COVID, we have to work from home, right? We don't have a problem with that. We don't need to put the camera on to watch everyone's faces. Is the person working? We don't need to. Work continues because there's unity, right? So I always tell bosses, if you don't want to spend so much money on human resource, spend more time on building unity and purpose. It saves you money, right? So because I don't have to watch people, okay, is this person working? Is that person working, right? It's a huge advantage to business.
It is the culture of trust.
Culture of
Lawrence.
trust. Yeah. And you know, it's funny for me that big companies are now studying this and they are like saying it's a big invention, right?
Yeah.
And I go like, oh, somebody said this in 1987. So sometimes I say when I retire next time and I have time, you know.
Now it's about the transition costs. No, if you do not invest in trust, you have transition costs. No, so you have
exactly. So it's definitely calculatable, and we have seen this a lot of times in many organizations. The fundamental issue, there's no trust, right? And when you build it into the culture, you are far more innovative, you are far more effective, right? So that's the data point that we are always looking into. Yeah.
So other questions, Evelyn, and the other students in classroom?
I think there is questions in question and answer in our books.
Okay.
Yes.
So present yourself. You are Sama.
Okay. Samah in the second year economy and management. The things that first thing that I thank you for your deepness presentation. I like the most, but also I would like to ask, after those years of experience, what the thing is that you think that if you started from the beginning will make a great differences than now?
Good. Well, if I have to start all over again,
yes,
I believe what I would do very differently is that I would I will not be so afraid, because in the beginning I was very afraid whether the message of purpose and unity will be accepted because of the environment I was in, right? And I was very hesitant about that message at times. If I have to start again, I will do it earlier. I won't take so long.
Great.
Thank you.
Do you want to read the questions in our books, Professor?
Well, first of all, we ask other people from the class to ask a question. Evelyn, for instance.
Yeah, I'm Evelyn from Nigeria, a student of economics and management, second year. And yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Lawrence, for this opportunity. I was really inspired. The only thing I think, the only question I think I think someone else has asked about how do you manage to okay, or I can still ask, how do you manage to overcome this fear of how am I going to do this? What if people don't understand my content? What if they don't see it from my own viewpoint? What if they don't really understand unity? What if they don't believe that there can be trust? How do you build that confidence?
Well, that's a good question. So I think I'm just now I mentioned about providence. So what I do always is I test the message, I test the methodology, and I see the reaction. So if I get projects, I get referral, or more and more people are asking me to speak, which happen many moments. Providentially, I know it's the right thing to say now. Like, I give you an example. We spoke a lot about, we have this methodology called Unity 4.0, where we measure the different levels of unity. And we started it a couple of years ago. And every time when we introduce that methodology, whether it's non-profit, profit organization, even in the church, because we are serving some church organizations to measure, right? How does the church live purpose and unity? And the kind of the reaction I got is fascinating, because people are saying, we have been trying to understand this ourselves, and you have a methodology to measure it that helps them to discern, right? So I think the best way to overcome that fear is don't assume, test the market, do it, see the reaction, and react according to a real market situation. Because most of the time we are thinking and we are judging ourselves. Oh, I think we better don't say this because they will think that I'm speaking nonsense. But even in the real business world, nobody does that. They always go out and test their prototypes, they test their methodologies, right? So I think what we have done over the couple of years is to just test it rather than assume and then assume, right? So if we see the reaction, we see the feedback from the market, right? Oh, that's the best confirmation that this is the right thing for the right moment. Yeah.
Any other questions from the students?
Can I ask him something else?
Yes.
Yeah, because sometimes as you visit Sofia before, maybe you find different cultures, different languages, different even habits with the same people from the same country. How you overcome when what you mentioned before, that you will work with different continent, Asia, Europe, and I think America, and how you overcome, because I can imagine that not every time you find it easy to convince, to act, to express. I think there's some difficulties you have already faced regarding to the difference, how you achieve this unity between the group where are already different in many things.
Well, now it's very different because they are consulates in different countries. You know? Like when I have to present something in Croatia, I have my Croatian friends, my colleagues who speak Croatian, and I just happen to be there, or I don't need to be there. And then when we have something to do in the US, we have our American colleagues who do the same. Likewise, if it is in Vietnam, we have our partner and our colleague in Vietnamese. So we do everything with the diversity, as in originally in Singapore. I mean, we started in Singapore, but now 90% of the whole of consulars, they are not Singaporeans. They are not from Singapore. They are in different cultures. So that diversity of culture matters a lot, right? And then the second thing is that we built our methodology to be as global as possible. So we are constantly changing, right? And we are constantly adapting, understanding the languages, understanding the issues. We try as much as possible to, I mean, one of the things we pride ourselves is every single year, we are having a new understanding on how we can approach the different markets. Like, for example, gender diversity, language diversity, racial diversity, that matters a lot for us in any of the projects that we try to do as best as we can. So I think that sensitivity to culture is also something that I learned from the Focolare movement because of the concept of the United World. And that has helped me a lot to scale consulars as a global organization. And now, it moves because of this diversity that's inherent in the process and in the system. Yeah.
Okay, now we move to a question in the chat, and then Luis and Simona. So first of all, some African friends ask why Consulus is not in Africa till now.
Oh, okay. Well, we can only go to a country if somebody wants to bring consulars to the country, so that's another sign of providence. We now have one person from Africa. He's understudying the whole process. So usually we give somebody time to understand us, to understand the community life, because as I said, as an economy of convenient business, the most important thing is the life, not the business first, right? So the life, and then how he participates in the community, how we understand him, and then at the right time we will announce. So we'll see. Not to give any pressure, but let's see how. Yeah, we are excited about Africa, of course. Yeah.
Okay, so now we give the word to Luis Fernando Ramirez.
Lawrence, hi, I am a PhD student of economics and management in Sofia. Now I am here in Colombia. I'm so happy for hearing you. It's very impressive, your experience about counselors and about the way how you persuade your colleagues for becoming an economic community company, because it's first of all, or the main thing, it's you have faced one of the handicaps in my opinion, of the economy of community you watch, is that of scaling the idea, especially when you work on specifically with people. I mean, the people is the most important resource for you. It's more difficult to share the values, the charisma, the idea, the values of economic communion, and you're facing it very, very well, as you're saying. In fact, I would like to know more about that experience and how you did that, because I think it's very, very impressive and very useful for other companies in the economic community in the world. In my research, or my PhD research, it's related with resilience, companies' resilience. So COVID-19 has presented a lot of opportunities to know about the importance of resilience when the crisis has come for everybody in the world. So I want to hear about your experience. How important, how has been the importance of relationships between people, trust, and capacity of reciprocity, and how that has an importance in the idea of resilience. Because when we talk about resilience, we think about a lot of things, technology, resources, etc. But this human factor, how long, on your experience, on your view, it has been important for this process and the reopening of the economy.
Yeah, thank you, Luis. So you have two questions, no? So let me answer the first one. But first and foremost, like I shared earlier, the culture of unity is really important. And the first characteristic is that if we start, the reason why it worked in Consulus is because I made a lot of effort to define what is a culture of unity. I didn't leave it vague. I didn't say things like, let's love one another, you know. I didn't. I just treated it like a human resource guideline. We have to have moments of sharing. We must have, when we share anything with each other, we have to say in a reciprocal way and how. So there are methodologies in Consulus. Of course, Kara Lubick never said any of those things, but we apply it as a method, right, on mutual caring and mutual love. And that, in a way, became the culture, because everyone knew that they have to participate in these sessions. Everyone knew they had to write a personal commitment. Everyone knew that they are part of this narrative to shape a culture of communion, right? So that helped a lot, because it removed the queries. It removed the doubts. Like, for example, in the early days, some people thought that they need to be a Catholic to live out the economy of communion. And we wrote that down. You don't need to be a Catholic. And even in recent days, because we kept talking about Chiara Lubick, some people were concerned. Do they need to join the Focolare movement? We said no. So we made a lot of effort to write down, to clarify, so that there is no ambiguity. I think the problem comes when you are ambiguous. When you tell people, let's build a culture of unity. What do you mean by a culture of unity? You know, even in the corporate world, they define it, right? So we did the same. We followed the benchmarks of writing it down, which is why you saw the Constitution. So the Constitution became an equal document. Everyone had the equal understanding. It's not because Lawrence had more understanding than me, but we made it equal. So I think definition, transparency, and the willingness to offer the rules for everyone to give a comment, to participate, to shape the culture is extremely important. But you must define it. If you don't define it in a culture where people are not familiar with what is the economy of communion, what is the values of a culture of unity, it becomes dangerous, because that secret, that lack of definition can be seen as manipulative. Because, well, only you know, I do not know. You know, I'm in a lesser position than you, because you know exactly what it means, but I don't understand anything about what do you mean by the culture of giving, what do you mean by the culture of unity, right? So I think that helped us in that process to codify, right? Then on the question of resilience, it is clear to me that all the major research out there as of now on human resource organizational dynamics affirm that relationship, reciprocity, as called for by the economy of communion, they are critical for organizational resilience. We are not the only ones who see that. There's many other data that affirms for mental well-being, for teamwork, you need relationship, you need reciprocity, right? And this is covered by Google's study on what makes the best team. It's not those with the most resources. It's not even those that come from the best universities. It's what they call psychological safety. But what is psychological safety? Psychological safety means there's reciprocity in the relationship. There's trust. That's exactly what's the vision of Chiara Lubick, right? So I think we are on the right path, right? If anyone would think otherwise, I will be very surprised in this 21st century of human resource, right? I will really be very surprised.
Yeah, just want to remarks for the students that culture is not only about values, it's about shared practices.
Yes.
And so what we are learning from Lauren's experience is that we need to have a little bit of design if we want to make it effective.
Yes, that's a very important point. And also to make everyone feel comfortable and be at peace, right? That you are not saying something that you can change all the time, but it's fair. It's part of governance. Yeah, that's right. Thank you.
Okay, Simona?
Grazie Gianpietro, un saluto cordiale a tutti. Thank you very much, Lawrence, for your beautiful, exciting experience. Congratulations a lot. I'm a PhD student and my research is about purpose and strategic implications. Exactly. So you can imagine I have plenty of questions for you, but at the moment I can ask you just one. In your opinion, what's the relationship between profit and purpose? Is there conflict? And in the case, if the case, how you can manage it?
So we have been looking at this in a lot of data. Of course, when we gather data from an organization, we do it in three parts. First, we look at all their documents. As in, we measure in the documents, how do they consider purpose? Say, suppose a company, they say, look, our purpose is we are very much for the family, right? So how many of their documents and their policies, they have their family in mind, and how does that impact performance, right? So that's one element. Second, in the surveys, we ask all the staff, right? How do they think? How do they consider? How do they, grow with the consideration of their, their purpose or things like that. And then we have interviews to detect their purpose. And what we realize is that most companies are run on the basis of vanity. That means they like certain ideas, but they are actually not interested to work at it. So in these cases, there is no impact on purpose to profit. Whereas those companies that say their purpose and mean it, as in they have designed it into their business model, their culture, they profit the most from their purpose. So it's not the lack of mention of purpose, it's the how, the implementation of purpose that leads to what we call sustainable and viable returns on profit. Because one important sign of strategic purpose in our study so far is strategic purpose must enable you better innovation. So it's not just production efficiency and effectiveness, that's easy. But if you do not have more innovation than the other, that is usually the safest sign to note that you are actually not aligned with your purpose, or you're not actually committed to your purpose. So if you look at the companies that have transformed, Tesla is a very good example. They are very strategic about their purpose. They are a smaller company than most of the automakers, but they are able to disrupt the sector, almost like on the ratio of 1 to 10, right? That is incredible. But they are not the first one. Apple, a much smaller company before, against Compaq, Hewlett Packard, much bigger entities compared to Apple in those days, but with strategic purpose and with alignment, their whole business model is designed around the strategic purpose. They had a higher net return, right, than in terms of growth and all versus these other. So it's not because these companies have a lack of purpose, but the difference is their commitment to actualize the gains, right, through strategic business model design. So a lot of times we are going after the business model. In Consular's case, we always question, do you mean what you say? Or do you like what you say, right? Because if you like what you say, that's great. Like even for Consulars, we question all the time, are we really implementing, are we really impacting an economy of community? Are we doing that? Or is just something we hope to do, right? So I think that is something very much in line with Chiara Lubig's methodology in a sense. Chiara was always concerned about how to impact a united world, right? In everything that she did.
Yeah.
And I think that you need that tension to always question yourself whether your purpose is enabling better returns, right?
Thank you very much. Sometimes I also guess what happens when, for example, company have to maybe not to look for profit first because it is a requirement, not an aim, but you need profit to go ahead, of course. No?
Yeah.
And it was interesting your experience when you shared before that once you have to choose, no, to choose among an opportunity or your purpose. No, you choose purpose, and then after you found it was the right decision, but it's not easy at the first time. No, so this is also another dimension of the question: how to manage conflicts, trade-offs. Sometimes when happens, no, and here I think the role of culture, as you explained very well, plays a very important role.
It is, and another piece of work we do a lot of with companies is the purpose-driven framework.
Yeah.
That means if this is your purpose, then your decision framework has to fall accordingly. That decide your business model, right? So it's quite incredible for me. For 18 years, most companies don't have a decision framework. They have a profit-based decision framework. I need to make more money. I need to lower costs. I said that's a very stupid framework. Who doesn't know that you need more profits and reduce costs? A kid can do that, right? That is really silly and dumb. If you talk about purpose-driven decision framework, then you start to be smart. Then you go like, oh, then you know what to say no. You know what to do, right? So I think the sharpest companies in the room I have seen, and when they showed us their purpose-driven decision framework, you know that it's very connected to the business model. And these guys, they know when to say no. They are clear about their values. They are clear about where they stand. Like Unilever. Unilever is going through this big transformation to be sustainable, right? They say no to any suppliers with child labor. They say no to any downstream that will pollute the environment. And because they are doing this, they are able to be seen as one of the champions for SDG goals. And that helps to drive performance, and that helps to drive morale in the 100,000 employees of Unilever who feel proud to be part of Unilever, right? So I think nowadays companies are going to shift more and more towards purpose-driven decision framework, which is very important. Not just I want to make more profit, I want to lower costs, and that's so old as a theory, right?
Yeah. Thank you a lot.
Yeah. Welcome.
So Lawrence, my question is, isn't it this decision framework based on purpose really the way to continuous search, define and implement strategy? Because we are really going to the core of strategy, no? Because you say yes, strategy is saying yes to something and say no to other things in order to keep a certain direction, no? Because strategy is a direction. No,
That's
first
right.
of all.
That's right. Yeah, totally, Gianpietro. I totally agree with you. I think at least a lot of the CEOs themselves now, they are coming to us and say, I want a purpose. They are asking us to design for them a decision framework that guides policy, that guides business decision making, because they are realizing that their managers, they do not run on purpose-driven decision framework. They are running on profit. So they have a vision, business vision, but the decision downstream is totally irrelevant to the business vision. And a lot of the CEOs are frustrated because they want to see systemic change in order to move the enterprise forward. So I would say that this is really becoming the it right now, purpose-driven decision frameworks. Yeah.
The thing is that when you follow profits, in fact, you are following the past, because you look back to what has been profitable or what is profitable for your competitors, but you are not looking ahead. This is a question. I have not an answer, but
Yeah,
this
no,
is a
I think,
question.
but you are totally right. I think we ourselves, when we looked at Nokia, when Nokia failed, Nokia did not fail because it didn't have profits. Let's be very clear. It had great profits. It has a huge suite of IP, intellectual property. So we cannot say Nokia is a bad company. It's a well-run company. But they lost because they kept their eyes on it will continue to run this way, its profit. When Apple, what Steve Jobs saw was the change in purpose because of the convergence and technology. So Steve Jobs, Tim Cook says Steve Jobs could see around the corner. What Steve Jobs saw was the new purpose for consumers, right? And that's where he won the game. Tesla is losing so much cash, burning cash flows. But why is Tesla being very strategic now in almost every single aspect on the electric vehicle? Simply put, because Toyota and the great GM, General Motors, and all the great automakers, they have perfected their model of profit and cost efficiency. They deliver returns, right? But they are not shaping the future of the auto industry, well, Tesla is. So once Tesla achieve what we call profit and cost efficiency with a new model, they will just eat up the rest of the market share, right? So I think these are factual statistics to prove that when you're purpose-driven, you're far more innovative as a player, because you start to question, right? I'm great. Like we are working with a hospital right now. If you look at that hospital on Matrix, there's nothing wrong with them. They are a great hospital. They are cost efficient. But because of the lack of strategic purpose, they are struggling. What's next? So if you don't have a strategic purpose, you will also be very worried about your next steps, right? So I think it's fascinating. You're certainly right on that. Yeah.
Okay, so
Gianpietro,
some
sorry,
minutes.
Gianpietro. Sorry.
Yes.
There is a question in the chat by Julio Cesar. Did you read it?
Yeah, but Lawrence already answered to the question. Yeah, okay, to the question of how to metrize unity and purpose. Yes, we already answered. So I think we are coming to the end of this fantastic 2 hours lectures and dialogue. I would just ask Lawrence to give a very simple advice and tips to our students before leaving. And then just to know to the students, we go back to our usual link and classroom for some debriefing.
First of all, I want to thank Gianpietro for your kind invitation. It really was a great joy for me to give back to Sophia as well. This is the legacy of Chiara Lubick. And also, I think my little advice, if I can, is to trust in the vision of Chiara Lubick. She was really very ahead of her time. And I think the success of Consulus is we took her words as it is and tried it. And I think we must be more courageous to try and to aim high and not to constrain ourselves. No, we are small, we are few. I think in our case, if we could do it all the way from Singapore, far away, and it works in a very cynical society, because the Asian society is very money-minded and cynical, I'm sure it will work much better in many places out there, right? So I think it's worthwhile to try out the vision of Chiara Lubick in actual terms, not in abstract terms, but really in business modeling, human resource strategies, even cultural transformation. I think it's really worthwhile. Then the last bit of advice is, I think this is the era where we really have to try, whatever project we try to do is to aim for global, because what I see is we need more global projects in the economy of convenience at different levels. It doesn't have to be a business, but really like what Sophia is doing, to go out with the e-academy and all these things. Because if we don't do that, then less people will understand the treasury of what we have, which is really, we need more solutions for a united world. So this is no longer the era of, hey, a united world is important. I think people get that. But people are asking, how do you do it? So I think if we try more with solutioning, then our impact, our net contribution towards the united world increases. Yeah.
Very good, Lawrence. So thank you very much, really, for your contribution. Thank you very much for the students and their questions. Thank you very much for all the big community that join us today. And we hope really to have other opportunities to work together, Consulus, Sophia, and all the community of economy of communion, because networking and sharing can really enrich us, not from the questioning and from the academic and studying side. Okay, so a big hug to your family, and we hear you soon.
Yes.
Thank you very much for participating.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Gianpietro. Thank you. Thank you, Benedetto.
Thank you, Lawrence.
Bye.